You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is pretty simple: to support you in building rock-solid foundations, legendary integrity, and kick-ass relationships with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and a solid dose of some loving straight talk. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I am your host, Mike Campbell, and welcome back. As of recording this, it's been a little while since I've done one. If you're listening to these well after the fact, then you can ignore that part. But I'm pumped to be back creating content. I've got some wonderful guests and podcasts lined up for you pretty soon, including today's one. And I'm going to come in pretty short and sharp with this solo episode and the title of this. And that is that, hey, nice guys are not good men. And so what I'm going to do today is we're going to explore this a little bit, and we're going to explore some very important differences between those two statements. I often get people who when I post about this kind of thing on social media and write about it in certain places, come back to me and say things like, semantics. And then it's like, well, you haven't really read the post, because I'm actually breaking down the difference in those semantics. Language is very important. And they might say things like, oh, so what, there's something wrong with being nice? It's like, no, there's definitely not. We're going to look at some very, very important details, especially when it comes to intentions. And we want to be nice, but we're going to break down the difference of those two terms. Nice guy, good man. So there's plenty of content around the world on nice guys. I've written and recorded videos, a lot of content on this. I've got colleagues and good friends of mine who have plenty of content on it. There's books out there, No More Mr. Nice Guy. There's plenty of things. I haven't actually read that book, by the way, but I've worked with many, many nice guys, and I am very much a nice guy in recovery, a former nice guy. And so let's first of all get clear on what the fuck is that term. So what we're doing when we use that term nice guy is we're kind of speaking to, let's call it nice guy syndrome, a way of being and set of behaviors that some guys fall into, that really become their kind of a major part of their personality, let's say. And what the nice guy is at the base of him and who he is he's nice. But the reason it's nice guy and the reason it's nice guy syndrome, if you haven't picked up already, it implies that there's something not so amazing about that, not so effective, something they want to explore and potentially work on. And what is really at the center of nice guy syndrome is he is someone that is nice, but there's more. There's a depth that requires investigation, that requires pulling back the layers, lifting the lid and seeing what's under there. Because what is at the center of the nice guy and the guy who is primarily nice is this. He is nice because he wants to be seen as nice. He needs to be liked by others. And so if we are going to extrapolate across and differentiate to a good man can be nice, but it's not from the intention and the point of driver and motivation so that he is seen as nice, so that people therefore like him. That is transactional and conditional niceness. And so if we were to sum up nice guy syndrome very simply, it would be a guy that is nice so that he is seen as nice and is liked in return. What I'm going to do in this podcast today is I shared a post recently on my social media where I broke down in a couple of slides some important differences between a nice guy and a good man. It got quite a response. Funny that. From a lot of women. So nice guys, pay attention to that. If there's nothing else that you learn from this podcast and content around nice guy syndrome. It's this: people see. You might think we don't, but the intentions can become clear. So that was pretty overwhelming, and it always has been, from the females that respond, and from nice guys in recovery like me too, or nice guys now who are like, oh shit, that hits pretty hard. Oof is a popular kind of meme in itself almost these days. So I'm going to speak to a few of those shortly, but the other point that I want to make and reinforce here is I am sharing this information, these statements, this knowledge, because I have worked with so many men who fall into this category. Holy shit. I would say, when you get down to the kind of nuts and bolts of my work and my business and who I work with, if you look at marketing and branding and who my audience is and all that stuff, and you deep dive in there, people often want to know, like, who do you work with? And they often think, like, from a very simple kind of almost outdated lens of, like, what's their job? Guys I work with are all shapes and sizes and creeds and jobs and careers, but there's other commonalities, and often that commonality is where they're at in their life. I tend to talk about this idea that if you had a spectrum of personal development, right? At one end, you had, let's say, Tony Robbins. He's the dude who I'm not calling him, he's my king, but he's one of those dudes that's kind of out in front, like, holy shit. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got Homer Simpson. The guys I work with are kind of smack bang in the middle and just the other side. They're starting, to explore some work. They may be doing some stuff. They've hit a bit of roadblock, a bit of a ceiling. They're not quite sure what the next step is. They want that next level. They're unsure how to get there. And they're just starting. They're listening to a podcast saying, fucking hell, this is me. Maybe I need to do something about this. I watch that video. I tap on that content. I listen to this thing in Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson or Russell Brand or whatever it is. This is speaking to me. Maybe I need to take that first step. That's the kind of most common element. And then perhaps the next one would be nice guys. Wherever they fall on that part there, they're nice guys. And I've worked with many, many nice guys in, supporting them in understanding themselves and being able to shift in a very simple sense to this place of being a good man. And so let's break that down in a moment. But also, one of the reasons that I know this so well, and why I have worked so successfully with so many men who fall into this category, is because I have been that guy. I am you. I have so many examples, countless, endless, that I share throughout my, in my coaching program, Everyday Legends Academy. I'm always sharing my own examples and my own stories because I've got to lead and I've got to be relatable. And that's me. It is my story. But also when we come through some of these points, and it sometimes is embarrassing to sit with some of these, things and behaviors in the past. And what I think I'll do is, I'm sure as I go through some of these points, I've been writing them down and so on, I will, I'll have some stories and things that probably pop up for me that I can share of my own examples. But that's what I want to really establish here, is that I'm not speaking to these points from my high horse or high up in a tower, looking down my nose at. I'm not in any kind of judgment of nice guys. I'm speaking to this as, here are some observed, well-observed, consistent facts, objectively, without judgment. But the idea with this work, with any work, right? But when we look at this stuff for nice guys, is that if these things exist, denying that they are true for you is not going to change the fact that they are there. It just means that they're operating covertly, which is one of the things that happens for nice guys, which we'll touch on. It means that they are operating covertly. It means they are running, they are part of your life. They're pulling the strings from the shadows. It means that you are disempowered and disempowering yourself by burying your head in the sand. Whilst it can be confronting, really confronting sometimes to look at some of these things, it is in that process that we can actually start to empower ourselves, because then we have the opportunity to take the reins and fucking do something about it. Now, you might not have all the tools and know how to do something about it, but that's the first step. So I invite you to listen to these with an open mind, with your feet planted and grounded, with a pen and a notebook, ready to learn and note down and go, that sounds like me, that sounds like me. And that open mind connected to curiosity, not self-judgment. I do not want you to be in self-judgment when you listen to this. I want you to be curious. That is the step towards compassion for yourself, because it is the step towards invitation to change and doing something about it, as I just discussed. Now, you might have questions come up through these points. Great, write them down, note them down, come hit me on email, get to my social medias, Mike Campbell MC on Instagram, DM me, throw them at me. I'm more than happy to explore these. I can, do specific videos about some of these points down the line if you want. But probably more accurately than anything, we can start to have a conversation about it. We can speak to what might work for you to understand it. Understanding is really at the base of all of this. And then at the other end of this, I'll speak to perhaps some simple strategy that you can start applying now in order to make that shift, if you want to make that shift. So let's dive into it and make sense of some of these points. What I'm going to do here is I've kind of equated these. 1 point and here for nice guys, and here's the equivalent, let's say, for good men. So listen up and we'll go through them. First of all, I'll start with the first 6 points that I shared in my post recently, and then we'll kind of expand from there. There's no accurate way in which these are laid out. These are just how they'll come out in me writing them. Some as a bit of continuation of earlier points, a tangent and all that kind of stuff. And there's more. I've got a bunch of points here, but there's plenty more, and I'm sure I'll come up with more over time. Okay, let's go. So here's what sits first and foremost. Nice guys are nice for recognition, validation, approval, and to seek and chase a sense of belonging. Now, before I even go beyond that, let me, I suppose, caveat maybe a first point. And that is this. When I say nice guys are nice for recognition, actually what would be more accurate is this. A lot of the time, nice guys are nice for recognition. None of this is absolutes. There is no black or white, all or nothing. There's a lot of nuance in here, and our job is to understand and explore that. Then things will become clearer. Because I actually think that a lot of nice guys are genuinely nice, good men, and in some part that will differ how much to the individual. But they don't give themselves enough credit. They don't give themselves enough credit. And so a lot of their niceness has this conditional niceness to it. So point number one, a lot of nice guys, a lot of the time, are nice for recognition, for validation, for approval, for a sense of belonging. They're chasing some kind of validation from others. That is reassurance, is what we're seeking. And man, do I know that. I remember the reassurance that I used to seek in multiple, ways, in different relationships and in different aspects of my life, work, etc., as well as friendships and romantic relationships. Whereas the difference in a good man is nice to be of service, to add value, to be nice without anything in response, without some kind of an exchange. He is nice because he cares. There isn't an expectation of something in return. And that expectation is often what sits at the base of niceness. For nice guys, i.e. guys that fall into nice guy syndrome, we've established that that's what I mean by that. Okay, next point is this. Nice guys are terrified of rejection. Terrified of rejection. The idea of rejection is sometimes all-consuming. He fundamentally needs to be liked. He needs to be liked so much that it is why he acts that way. I need you to like me, so therefore I can potentially start to like myself. And the idea of rejection is a harsh kind of incident, I suppose, of not being liked. It's not only not being liked, it's being rejected. Oh, that cuts to the core of who I am. And we'll speak about that a little bit later. Whereas a good man is at peace with rejection and not being liked. He understands and accepts that some people won't like me. That rejection, not being chosen, that's part of humanity. It's part of being human. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about me and who I am, my worth and worthiness as a man or a person, but it's part of humanity. Next point. A nice guy is self-centered, has self-centered and fear-based internal chatter. And as you can see, a lot of this terminology can require a bit of nuance. It's beyond the scope of this short podcast, but That doesn't mean that the nice guy is self-centered, but he is acting from a place of being self-centered in his thought patterns. I need you to like me, right? So that's a self-centered place. And so the point here being he is self-centered and fear-based internal chatter. A good man, on the other hand, has internal chatter that is based around respect of self and others. So what happens, therefore, with this kind of energy with the nice guy is that it's a taking and a needy energy, right? Even though it's like I'm helping, I'm saying yes to everything, I'm being nice, it's so I can then take that approval, take that validation. It's needy. I need you to like me. I need you to not reject me. I need you to reassure me that I'm okay. Taking and needy energy. Whereas a good man has a giving and service-based energy. I am nice because I want to give, because I want to be of service, nothing more. Next point. What is at the base of this for nice guys is our insecurities. And the insecurity is running the show, hence the taking, the needing. I need you to make me feel secure. And so that insecurity manifests as niceness and perception management. Perception management. Because what a nice guy is doing fundamentally is trying to manage other people's perceptions of him. I need you to see me as a good, nice guy. And the moment I'm doing that is the moment I am trying to subtly manipulate who you think I am. So I'm actually subtly manipulating you from a place of insecurity. Insecurity manifests in this kind of perception management. Whereas for the good man, security in self manifests as grounded calmness and self-assurance. Not this consistent need for assurance from others by managing how you perceive me and therefore liking me so I feel secure and assured. But I'm responsible for my own sense of assurance, of security, and grounded calmness. And the final point from this original post was this. Even though the nice guy has this internal fear-based self-centered chatter, he is externally focused, i.e. in what he can get from others, the approval, the validation, the belonging, the assurance. Whereas the good man is internally focused in this regard in terms of who he wants to be for others. So first of all, I focus on myself. Who do I want to be for myself and in the world and for others, for those people that matter? Not for everyone, but for those people that matter, that I can influence, that I can impact. And so if we move on and go through some more of these points, the nice guy is nice to be liked by others so that he can feel okay about himself and potentially like himself. The problem with that is it never lands because he doesn't like himself enough yet. He's hoping that other people liking him will allow him to like himself, but it's like a sieve. You pour something into a sieve, it might sit there for a while and falls through. You need more and more and more. It's a bottomless pit. Whereas a good man is nice because he likes himself. He's okay already. He doesn't need others to reassure him that he's okay. And so what comes from that for nice guys is that this consistent helping, saying yes, helping, saying yes, and always being there for others, always coming last. And so there's always this kind of helping persona. And they are helpful, but a lot of that still has this transactional element to it. I'll help you, you like me in return. I'll help you, you help me in return, right? There's this transactional element to things. Whereas for a good man, helping is relational, as in let's connect, let's work on this together, let's support you, let's be of service. Very different to the transactional element. Here's something that nice guys fall into, and that is nice guys are skeptical of compliments and kindness from others. They have a lot of doubt. They often reject compliments. They struggle to receive kindness and support and help from others, even though they want to give that to others. Because what sits at the base of the nice guy is this insecurity. And so because he runs transactions and a bit of a ledger If I'm nice, you do something in return for me, you like me in return. Then when others are nice, automatically there's this conscious or subconscious idea that, well, then what do they want from me? What do I have to give back here? And so they become very skeptical of it, a lot of doubt around it, and they can't very struggle to receive kindness and compliments even, let alone help or support from others. You think about that. How do you respond when someone compliments you? Are you awkward? Do you deflect it? Do you squash it? Do you try and make a joke about it? Do you feel like you quickly need to respond and give your own and back to them, right? That kind of transactional ledger thing. Can you receive it? And so that's what a good man can do. He is comfortable receiving compliments and kindness and offers of support and help. It doesn't create some kind of internal wrestle or dialogue or anything like that. There's comfort there, which kind of brings us into our next point, and that is one of the kind of fundamental, I suppose, behaviors of the nice guy is that he plays peacekeeper all the time. Peacekeeper, 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 all the while wanting peace, but never allows himself to experience it. Where the good man is at peace with himself. And so while he might, let's say, play peacekeeper in a situation because it calls for it, he's not playing peacekeeper in order to try and establish peace, because the nice guy is so terrified if there isn't peace, it's something about him. He's going to be the center of attention. It's something that he's done wrong, something wrong with me. Whereas the good man is already at peace with himself. So he doesn't need others to be at peace to make him feel okay. Which leads us to our next piece of conflict. The nice guy is terrified of conflict. And I remember this myself being one of the biggest things that used to fucking just absolutely terrorize me. The idea of conflict was horrific. That, along with rejection. Conflict is so uneasy to the nice guy because there's often a lot going on there. But one of the simple things is that because he thinks that it means he's done something wrong. If he's into conflict, then he's wrong. And or he hates the idea of being wrong. And so he'll avoid that conflict and try and keep the peace, sweep things under the rug, sweep things under the rug, sweep things under the rug. The nice guy is terrible at sweeping things under the rug. But the problem with that is this: the more you sweep things under the rug, the bigger the pile gets. And sooner or later, you're going to trip on that. And brother, if this is you, trust me, you will trip on that. Whereas the good man is okay with conflict. He can face conflict securely, grounded. He explores solutions. He's okay with being wrong or being corrected or learning something or having, the opportunity to admit and stand corrected and adjust and flex. And that is kind of one of the things that I'll come back to here when it comes to conflict, is that the nice guy is so unsettled with conflict. He's like a leaf in the wind, blowing any which way the wind wants to blow. And so conflict feels wildly out of control. And so avoiding conflict feels like control, but it's not. What's controlled is being grounded and allowing conflict. But also it invites the exploration into the definition of conflict. Conflict to the nice guys is some dirty word. To a good man, conflict is something that is part of humanity. And when we can explore it with curiosity and look for solutions and to connect with others around conflict, perhaps we can get out of that. But we've got to be grounded for that. And that's where control comes from, being controlled within myself. And then the next point. The nice guy is, and this is something that we've spoken about here, the nice guy seeks approval from others in order to feel secure within himself. Whereas a good man, he can appreciate approval, but he is already secure. And so what others' approval, what recognition and validation and praise and those things do, they add to the security of a nice guy. They're nice to have. They're not needs to have. And so what often happens to the link from earlier, nice guys are so terrified of rejection, they will avoid rejection at any cost. They will avoid rejection at any cost. Whereas a good man accepts that rejection is part of life. But if you avoid rejection at any cost, think about the consequences, myriad and wide-ranging. We will shoot down so many opportunities. We think our edge is way closer than it is. We won't step into things that have amazing potential and possibility for us. And so our potential never gets actualized or realized or even slightly approached because we're terrified of rejection so much. And what this speaks to, as in large part, and as I have mentioned already, for so many nice guys, is that insecurity is running the show. And the nice guy, insecure is kind of the MO. It's the underlying operating system, let's say. And so what the nice guy does is he chases security from external sources in order to feel secure. That's seeking approval of, right? But it's not just approval and validation. It's other things. It's status, it's money, it's things. I need to chase a sense of security, right? Financial security, a big common one. It's important, but the definition and how we go about it, that differs. All the external security, money, finance, relationships, status, women who like you, whatever it is, won't make up for your insecurity. Whereas a good man is secure in himself. He likes himself. It's nice to be liked by others, but he doesn't need it. Whereas that insecure chasing of security is, if I'm liked, then I can feel secure, but it's not. It's very hollow. It's that sieve example again. And so what happens, that's taking energy. The nice guys, they're taking validation from others. And so it's that taking energy, whereas a good man is in service of building others up, regardless of what comes back to him. Which, of course, if you hadn't caught onto this, what comes back to him is this kind of innate sense of purpose and self-respect, by the way. But that's what the nice guy does, is he chases the respect of others versus a good man who acts with and builds self-respect. The foundation is self-respect. The nice guy is chasing, I want others to respect me so then I can feel important and then I can potentially respect myself. That doesn't work that way. And so what the nice guy ends up doing is he does things for others, for the approval of doing things, for what comes with that, praise, the recognition, the importance, etc. The status, maybe. Whereas a good man does things for others because he cares. And speaking to that and the needy energy, as I spoke to before, the nice guy needs others to see that he doesn't have needs. And this is a bit of a head fuck, this one, but often what's happening for nice guys is there's this desperate need to not seem needy, but that in itself, by default, is needy. And so he will be selfless and he will give to others and he will say yes at all the time, and he will come last because he can't seem to have needs because he doesn't feel like he can. That's his insecurity running. Whereas a good man is okay with having needs and having them met. He can ask for what he wants. He knows he needs to meet his needs primarily and does so. Whereas the nice guy, he feels selfish having needs, and so he denies them. So he hates asking for what he wants. So he uses passive language. He hints at the truth without being clear and direct. A good man is happy to ask for what he wants. He can use clear language. He can be open and honest, and is okay receiving. To that earlier point, the nice guy struggles to receive, so he can't even ask for what he wants, let alone receive it if someone offers it to him. Now, something that's a bit of a thread through this in the idea of having wants, right? The nice guy feels selfish having needs, and so he feels desperately that he needs to be selfless, right? He's always doing for others, but because it's conditional, it's transactional, he is selfless for recognition, for the approval, for the transaction, whereas a good man is selfless to be of service. And he has a healthy selfishness, let's say. He knows how to prioritize himself, to look after himself, to set boundaries. He can say no compassionately because that is a healthy selfishness, whereas the nice guy has poor, sometimes absent, sometimes porous, very weak, floppy boundaries, like a wet piece of newspaper. He can't say no, he can't say no, he can't say no unless, boom, he pops and he says no angrily in an inappropriate way, with a bit of a fuck you and a fuck off and being an asshole. And that's one of the big challenges for nice guys, that they think, if I'm not a nice guy, I'm being an asshole. That is the other end of the spectrum. A good man isn't an asshole, but he can have respect for himself and others and say no with compassion and strength. Now, here's a point that I spoke to earlier. The nice guy manages the perceptions of others to avoid taking a hit to his self-esteem. So he is in perception management in order to avoid taking that further hit to his self-esteem. Whereas a good man, his self-esteem is not impacted by others and not impacted by others' perceptions of him. He's influenced by others, but he is not, his self-esteem is not based on, is not as a result of how others may or may not perceive him, because he knows that rejection is part of life. Some people won't like him, all those things. And so one of the really important things that we need to touch on here that is going on for nice guys with all this kind of, nice for the approval, all that kind of stuff, is these things, this transactional niceness is what we call covert contract. A covert contract is, I'll do this for you, and then I expect X in return, but I haven't communicated that with you, therefore it's covert. It's a contract that we've essentially entered into. And so what happens in that? It's a subtle form of manipulation. I am doing this and being nice and being the nice guy and being helpful and all that kind of stuff to manage your perception and to hopefully, create some kind of result. And that is a subtle form of manipulation. And if nothing else, that is not nice. That is not nice. Whereas a good man is upfront with agreements, with requirements, with requests and desires. He can communicate those things. Also knowing that, guess what? He might hear no. Nice guys can't hear no nor say it. Good men can say no and can hear it. And so what often happens is a lot of resentment can build up around that covert contract, around the transactions not being met and reciprocated and so on. And so what often happens for a lot of nice guys, because they struggle to allow themselves to have needs and ask for what they want and receive what they want, is that they become envious and jealous of others and at others' expense. And so what will often happen around others' success, what will often happen around others' success is kind of fake niceness, perhaps, when underneath there's a little bit of that envy and jealousy, and often either outwardly or inwardly complaining around that stuff. And it's easy to project that outwards, whereas really the reflection needs to turn on self. Whereas a good man is happy with others' success, happy for them, has inspiration at others' success, appreciation sometimes for the inspiration that comes from that. And so some of the stuff that extends from that for nice guys is there's this judges others inwardly, but is potentially nice to their face, but there's a lot of judgment around that. Whereas the good man admires others inwardly and is nice to their face. Now, here's what is a theme through a lot of this, and I've kind of spoken to these words at some point, and that is that the nice guy has this kind of conditional giving, right, in order to get something in return. It's that transactional element, whereas the good man has unconditional giving. He is giving for the sake of it. He is good and nice for the sake of it, not for what the transaction has on the other side. And so what often happens, therefore, for the nice guy is he overcommits, can't say no, want people to like me, want me to say, I have to say yes to everything. And so when we overcommit like that, by default, we underdeliver. And we're often hoping that the words of commitment are enough that I will be seen as someone who can commit, seen in a good light. But that's fucking empty if you can't follow through on that. And so the over-delivering, always feeling stretched, always coming last, always copping it, always letting people down, not dependable. That is very common for the nice guy. Whereas a good man is solid and dependable with his commitments. He commits to things that matter and he makes them matter, unless, of course, he can't make it. And then he can speak to that. He can own it. I overcommitted. I can't follow through on that. I'm very sorry. He can apologize and own something, willing to make a mistake. Because making a mistake doesn't mean that you are a mistake, doesn't mean that you are wrong because you were wrong when you first committed to that, or you were wrong in your assessment that you could cover it, let's say. That doesn't mean that a good man backs out on every commitment, but if he feels like he can't follow through on it, or there's a consequence that is too heavy, he can speak to that and own it. And so what happens for the nice guy in this context is he regularly feels stretched. because he says yes to everything. Spinning all the plates, spinning all the fucking hell. Stop spinning all the plates. But when you get into spinning the plate mode, the only mode is to keep going, because if you stop, they'll smash. And that's where the nice guy often feels. And so he's always stretched, low on energy, no energy for himself. Whereas a good man, he can manage his energy and his yeses to actually be effective. And so you can see what happens here with the nice guy is that he struggles to say no, but he wants to do so. So he gets pissed off at himself for not doing it, and he gets pissed off at others for asking him. Just don't ask me. No, just say no. Set a boundary. And so that's where the good man comes in. What he can do is say no to requests when necessary. He understands his capacity and his boundaries, and he can communicate that with respect, with kindness, with compassion, without being an asshole, which is what the nice guy fears so much, because being an asshole is like the crowning jewel of being not liked and not being a nice guy, or not being seen as a nice guy. And so what happens with these poor boundaries is that the nice guy will generally have poor or low boundaries until he flies off the handle, right? And then it becomes an overreaction, a wall goes up, shut down, something like that. Whereas a good man knows when boundaries are being pushed and can communicate effectively. And here's the point that I want to get to finally, that sits at the base of all of this, our insecurity for nice guys, is that deep down he fears that he is not good enough. And he has a fundamental root fear around his worth and worthiness. And he thinks that if he's not liked, if people don't like him, if he's not seen as nice, all these kind of things, that he will be seen as his deepest fear, which is not wanted, not good enough. And that runs his entire fucking life. Everything else becomes a symptom of the boundaries, the overcommitment, all that kind of stuff. Whereas a good man deep down knows he is enough. He still has doubts. He's human. He has fears. But he knows that he is enough. Saying no, someone not liking him, not being seen as nice, does not determine and change who he is and his value and worth. And these have been some differences, very important differences between nice guys and good men. And when we break that down, we can see nice guys are not good men. Now, here's something that I want to touch on to wrap this up. Nice guys often feel that they can't do anything about their insecurities because the insecurity reinforces that something is wrong with them. Right? And so that being wrong and something wrong with me, therefore I'm not good enough, it cripples us. It exacerbates it. So they don't do some work. They keep seeking security from things, from people, from money, from relationships, from achievements, from status. We don't do the work because admitting that we need to work reinforces the belief that something's wrong with me and I don't do it, and it keeps happening and it keeps exacerbating. The work for nice guys is to find people, communities, tools, content to work on, to build security. We have to build security. If you think of a house, it needs a foundation. One man doesn't lay a strong as fuck foundation by himself. He needs tools and team. It's the same for you. Even though you might live in that house alone, you can't build a foundation alone. It also means you can't just go about building a flashy house on an insecure foundation and knowing that it's insecure, right? A weakness in the integrity of it and its structure. That's what is insecure there. Knowing that, you can't try and build a flashy house to distract people and compensate for it, right? What a nice house. You need a foundation. And if you don't have the tools for the foundation that you need, you're going to have to find them. You're going to have to invest in them. People, ideas, content, courses, relationships. Invest time, money, energy. You need to give a shit. And here's the challenge for a lot of nice guys is that you might struggle at the idea of admitting something might need work. But not doing so just exacerbates it. right? We struggle to admit it because then there's something wrong with me, all that kind of stuff. So here's the thing that I invite you to. You must see that if your insecurities stop you outgrowing them, you can't keep feeding them with a facade of niceness. You have to be nice to yourself and actually act from an insecure place. You can't wait to feel fully secure to then act, because that doesn't happen. You've got to learn to act from an insecure place. Act from a place that feels, this is uncomfortable. I don't feel wildly confident here. Because from there, you build a foundation. So here is my major strategy for you and my major invitation for you today. Strategy number one is this. Strategy is not enough. Here's the problem for so many guys and nice guys. We go looking for the strategy. How do I become more confident? How do I say no and have better boundaries? Those things are important. But if we haven't worked on the foundation of your insecurity and this fear of not being good enough and not worthy of love and all that shit, then the strategy won't stick. Quick example. Health and fitness. Let's say most people want to be fit and healthy. Safe assumption. Most people know the strategy. Fucking exercise, eat well, get some rest, right? And some few more specifics, but that's the gist. So if we know the strategy and thereabouts, why don't people do it? And therein lies the point. Because the strategy isn't enough. We have to get to the base of why don't I exercise and look after my body and have respect for it? That's worth investigating. And it's the same here. We can't just work on strategies for boundaries and these things without digging into the root insecurity. So that is strategy number one. And my point and invitation number two is this. My coaching program, the Everyday Legends Academy, is where we do all of that foundational work and feel safe and supported in doing so. And that starts with a chat, with a conversation. So let me extend this. If listening to this podcast and my content, you feel like, you know what, Mike does feel like a dude I could chat with about this stuff. Yeah, he might be challenging and I might feel very challenged in that, but I also suspect that maybe I need that. Then take the insecure and courageous action. And when I say insecure, I mean from that place of not feeling fully confident, but therefore courageous, and book a call with me. I won't intentionally challenge the shit out of you, but I will work to bring clarity for you and your situation and to provide an opportunity to discuss Everyday Legends Academy. And if it's suitable, and this is the important point, if I think it's suitable and it can be the solution for you, then we can discuss ELA. The first point is let's bring clarity for you, for nice guy syndrome, and the simple first steps to get out of that. All right. That's our podcast today. If you've enjoyed this, if you've benefited from this, please share, like it, reach out to me, let me know, email me, Instagram, all those things, and also share this with men that you think can benefit from it. If you're not following us, like, subscribe, click download, all those kind of things. Pass this on to men, to nice guys that you think will benefit from it. And please, gentlemen, take action on this work. And I will leave you with this. If the idea of a good man appeals to you, but you're not there yet, do you have what it takes to be or become this man? If not, how will you become this man? What will you do? And who is in your corner? Those are very important questions to contemplate. This has been the Everyday Legends podcast. I have been your host, Mike Campbell. Thank you for joining me as we explore this subject that has many, many roots and a lot more depth to explore, but a good starting point for us here, I think. All right. Go and get this shit done, put it into action, make it happen, reach out to me, let's have a conversation, and let's see if we can support you in becoming this good man, or what I like to call the Everyday Legend. You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. If this podcast has benefited you, if you enjoyed this, then my request, my invitation is to share this with a man that you think will also benefit from this and enjoy this. Remember, please, wherever you find your podcast, to like us, subscribe to us, click download first, leave us a review. All those things both make sure you get all the updates when they come in, and it supports us in getting this podcast in front of more everyday men that could use it. Until next time, I've been Mike Campbell. Remember to build that legendary integrity. And remember, everyday men, we thrive when we are championed, when we are supported, when we are appreciated and recognized for who we choose to be in the world. Here is my invitation to both show up and be that everyday legend, and to continue to champion the everyday men in your life.